G'day guys and gal. Grey Knights are supposed to be incorruptible paragons of the Emperor's righteous fury, created to slay demons and fulfill the role that the absent loyalist Primarchs no longer could. The Imperium owes its continued survival to the Brotherhood of Demon Hunters. However, a fact that the Grey Knights don't really want you to know is that they aren't actually incorruptible like the Custodes are. They just have never lost anyone to corruption because they're so wary of it and have trained for it and have been vetted so well that they can resist it. But unlike Custodians, Grey Knights have to try really hard not to fall, and no one has to try harder than Garran, Crowe, a Castellan champion of the Grey Knights who wields a hectic demon sword that is constantly trying to corrupt him to chaos, and he also happens to be the only Grey Knight model that doesn't look like he's suffering from some kind of dwarfism, and that's worth chatting about. Before we get started, you've done it. You've survived another year, but life isn't about surviving, it's about thriving, and the best way to thrive is by doing the easiest things you can to look after yourself and build up from there. The absolute easiest is employing a skincare routine, and since I've partnered up with Joology once again, it's never been easier. Joology is a skincare brand that knows us blokes suck at skincare, so they simply ask us to fill out a quick survey and then they deliver a custom skincare regime with easy to follow instructions to your door. For me, the Australian sun is literally Satan, so my morning cream has SPF in it. I've been a customer for Joology for like 4 years now and my skin has never looked better. It did wonders for my dark circles, it made my skin way less oily and it improved my overall complexion. Joology isn't just skincare though, they have amazing natural smelling body washes, shampoos and deodorants, so to get a massive 70% off your first skincare package, as well as an additional 50% off a product of your choice, then use my link, the QR code on screen, or code Majorkill70. Start your 2025 off right. Cheers to Joology for sponsoring this video. Today we'll go over the legendary Garran Crowe, detailing his relationship with his demon sword, why he has to use it, as well as some of the cool shit he has done. Let's get into it. Castellan Crowe is one of those characters that doesn't really have an origin story beyond this guy's fucking cool and special, deal with it. And you know what? That's okay. Not everyone has to be Batman. What we do know is that Garran Crowe is a part of the Purifiers, one of the elite brotherhoods of the Grey Knights, with the other elite brotherhood being the Paladins. Paladins are like the super elite champions of the Grey Knights, being the best of the best warriors the dudes in Grey have, whereas the Purifiers are the most anti-warp, incorruptible, and pure of the Grey Knights. If you send a Paladin to kill a Bloodthirster, you'd send a Purifier to kill a Keeper of Secrets sort of thing. They're so pure and noble that it physically hurts demons to be near them, with most of their psychic ability being based around a burning black flame that purifies that ass. They're actually so pure that there is generally only 40 of them out of the chapter of 1,000 Grey Knights or so that exist. As a fun fact, it was the Purifiers who went to the dead craft world of Malantai, banished Enkari, and stood guard over the Eldar Spirit Stones until the Elder arrived to collect them. They're just top blokes like that. So that is the order that Garran Crowe is a part of. However, he only really came to prominence upon taking control of the Demon Sword, Blade of Antwyr. So naturally, we now have to dive into that sword's lore. I promise we'll get to Garran soon. The Blade of Antwyr isn't just your everyday run-of-the-mill demon sword. It's much more comparable to Draknian, the Blade of Abaddon, than the standard demon swords that Chaos champions usually wield. It first appeared in the 37th millennium and it fucks shit up, causing a full Chaos uprising led by a turbocharged demon host. It actually took nearly the entire Grey Knight chapter to stop the uprising and slay the demon host, but the Blade of Antwyr was a crafty fuck, and it managed to teleport into the warp to avoid getting captured. 3,000 years later it reappeared, but the Grey Knights were ready for it. They have a brotherhood who can kind of see the future called the Prognosticators, that knew when it would re-emerge and where. As such, when it re-emerged and was taken up by a heretic, the Grey Knights curb stomped his ass and took the sword back to Titan. Now most demon weapons can be destroyed or unmade, as most of them are just powerful demons shoved into a sword or turned into a sword, such as a greater demon or demon prince. The logic being that if a greater demon or demon prince can be banished or slain, a demon weapon would also be able to, especially if it was literally with the Grey Knights. However, the Blade of Antwyr was indestructible and unbanishable. No ritual could affect it. The Grey Knights also didn't want to lock it away or throw it into space, as eventually Chaos would get their hands on it again and fuck shit up. Hence it was given to the Purifiers, the most incorruptible of all Grey Knights, for the strongest of their number to wield and act as its living jailer. However, even the greatest of the Purifiers could not resist it forever. Although they never became corrupted, it whittled down their souls and bodies so that by the time they died, they were husks of their former selves. This is what happened to Garran Crowe's predecessor, Merritt Gavilan. Merritt was so weak during his final mission that the blade was able to corrupt a nearby mortal who managed to take the sword off Merritt and slay him with it. Garran Crowe then managed to slay the mortal and reclaim the sword, enraging the blade that thought it was finally free. It's unclear what demon resides within the blade, but there are two theories. Either it's a special unique super demon, like Draknian, which is tied to some kind of metaphysical universal truth that cannot be destroyed, or it could even be an aspect of some ancient forgotten chaos god. After all, the warp is full of shitloads of warp entities that could be considered minor chaos gods. There's literally a line in the lore that when the Great Rift opened, the warp was so spicy that gods were being born and dying all the time because it was so turbocharged. Either way, the sword is fucked. Yet amazingly, Garran Crowe was the first Granite Purifier in all of history who could genuinely resist it without becoming a husk. Taking this a step further, to try limit its ability to influence anyone else, he always has at least one hand upon its hilt, hence is always in contact with it. As such, it constantly whispers to him, trying to corrupt him or taunt him, yet he just ignores it. This is also why he uses it in combat. If he just left it in its sheath at his hip and used the standard Grey Knight weapon, it would be prone to be taken by the enemy, or it would try to corrupt the people around it. But with his hand upon it, it has to focus on him. The main issue is he doesn't even get a power boost from having it, as he refuses to allow any of its power to seep into himself, so for all intents and purposes, it's just a sharp, indestructible sword. He doesn't get any advantage from using it. The sword even has its own personality. If Crowe is fighting a demon that the sword likes, the sword will try to tell the demon about Crowe's weaknesses or fighting style in order to try help the demon slay Crowe and free the sword. However, if Crowe is fighting a demon the sword hates or is a rival to, the sword will try lend its power to Crowe or give him advice or encouragement or some shit. Crowe never takes the sword's advice because he isn't a fucking retard. However, he remembers everything it says and he tells the Grey Knights, who record it in an attempt to try to discover some way of destroying it. However, the sword also isn't retarded, so it doesn't leak anything about that there. However, recently its whispers did provide a result for once. The sword knew that Skulltaker, the legendary Herald of Khorne, was going to enter real space and try to do some shit, and the sword fucking hates Skulltaker due to some old beef, so it whispered a warning to the Grey Knights. They travel to the world as Skulltaker is corrupting it and trying to turn it into a demon world. Crowe and his brothers teleport to the battle, and Crowe knows that only he can face Skulltaker and survive. Some may call that arrogance, I call it confidence. The sword was literally jizzing itself at a chance to fight Skulltaker, and whilst Crowe was a bit pissy that it was basically doing what the sword wanted, it was also a good idea. So Crowe was like, "Oi, Skulltaker, you minge-eating fuck, come get this skull, bitch," and the two engaged in a duel. Now Crowe is a legend, but Skulltaker is Skulltaker, so Crowe had a bit of an ace up his sleeve. He was able to obtain a vial that had a couple tears of the Emperor in it, which is pretty wild, and he threw that at the ground to consecrate it, weakening Skulltaker enough so that Crowe wouldn't just get curb stomped. The two fought for hours, the sword begging Crowe to be unleashed so it could destroy Skulltaker, but Crowe was like, "Shut the fuck up and let me focus." Now Crowe was never going to beat Skulltaker, but he didn't have to. Keeping the Herald of Khorne distracted, his brothers managed to purge the world and weaken Khorne's influence on it, thus weakening Skulltaker until he too was banished, something the sword found wildly amusing. So in this case, the sword literally helped save an entire world from Khorne's influence. Sure, it was out of complete spite and a potential opportunity to free itself from Crowe, but it also shows that maybe it's accepted that it's not going anywhere anytime soon, so may as well have some fun. Despite Crowe's control of the blade, it has caused him to become pretty unpopular. Other purifiers can't even be in his presence for long before the blade starts affecting them, so he basically just hangs out by himself. I mean, the dude's dick doesn't even work, so he can't just jerk off. All he has for company is the sword's constant whispering. It's unable to brute force his will, it can't tempt him, however it is still trying to learn as much as possible about Crowe, so that one day it may finally find a chink in Crowe's currently unbreakable mental armor. Now, despite a recently released new model, his lore hasn't really done much in recent times. The last we see of Crowe is during the events of the Psychic Awakening, which was the aftermath of the opening of the Great Rift. He was sent to rescue some Grey Knights that got stuck on the homeworld of the Thousand Suns. We can assume he was successful because the dude's a fucking beast like that. As for his new model, the blade looks quite different. In his original, it's subdued and contained. In his new model, it's flaming and it looks more unleashed. Not sure if they wanted to make it look more hectic or if the sword itself is evolving, but it looks a lot deadlier now. That flame would burn like a bitch. As a funny side note, Crowe now looks wildly out of place in a Grey Knight army since they're all still a bunch of squat-ass midgets that he now towers over. If there is one army that needs a range refresh, it's the Grey Knights. Can't have the Imperium's most badass demon hunters looking like a bunch of manlets. All I want to see now is Crowe cross blades with Abaddon. A clash between Draknian and the Blade of Antwyr would be legendary. Perhaps in that engagement, Crowe might finally crack if it means a shot at slaying the War Master of Chaos. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then join the Patreon, where you have live action nude cosplays, a boatload of Battlemace 40 million hentai, and high-res custom Warhammer 40k fan arts, all for as little as $1. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more uncorruptible content. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.